Welcome back to my ground pounding guide in the AV-8B Plus for Italy. But in all seriousness, the Mavericks are only being carried so I can slam some AA at the start so that they don't slam me throughout the middle of the game. Because AA, mid-map AA especially, have chosen violence since the start of this patch. But what is the AV-8B like? It's very much like the GR7, at least in Era B. Because you have the same wings, you have a slightly better engine, but you also are a little bit heavier. This doesn't impact your gameplay too much, because the gameplay loop of the Harrier remains largely the same. You also miss about 60 Brazilian flares, not the biggest issue however, because you still have 180, which is more than sufficient. However, you are pretty slow, you are still a Harrier. You can run this thing at a little bit higher percent throttle than the other Harriers because the engine isn't as prone to overheating. You can run this thing on 100. I go to 98% most of the time to combat most of the overheating. But all in all, it's a very slow plane that loses a lot of speed and is kind of maneuverable. If you want to see me actually dogfight people, you're better off watching my dev server video. Everything I do there is still relevant today because nothing has been changed. But it's a Harrier. There's really not much to talk about here as in terms of an air superiority plane. It relies on flying between your teammates and picking off people that are occupied. It's a third party mobile. You are kind of the Dookie dumper as with the video that I did on the GR7 a while ago. Except you can't really go to altitude anymore. The contrails nerf this plane a little bit. They make it so that you get spotted across the map if you try to get above like 5.5 to 6 kilometers. Unless of course your match is going to be absolutely filled with clouds like you are seeing right here. You do want to be careful that you don't get Freddy Fazbeared by one of the mountains when you are flying in these clouds. Be careful, but it does give you the ability to get a little bit of altitude. However, you can't lock in these clouds, making this plane kind of obsolete. Because the main thing is the AIM-9M, which you can see right here just does not want to lock on. It keeps locking the air behind him. He starts raid fighting me and then I get jumped by 20 people at once. I eject in time luckily and we survive to tail the tail to start fighting the F-16 over here. The F-16 notices us, we drop the Mavericks, we only use them to get maybe 1 or 2 kills in. They're not really that essential to our gameplay, but I just run them because it doesn't really impact me and I can always drop them if I don't need them after all. We have an ADF here, we instantly turn in him, we almost get the shot there, but I mean this thing is kind of unwieldy and especially at low speed. It's really floppy. It takes a bit to get into VTOL mode. As you can see here, it's a little bit awkward to aim. I'm over-leading, I'm under-leading. I'm kind of just flopping all over the place like a dead fish on land. I'm going into WAP. I'm dropping my flaps to slow down. I'm trying to go into VTOL mode so I can start pitching in. Because if I'm not using the VTOL, this guy is going to absolutely slam me in a dogfight. Because he will just outrate me completely. And he is trying to transition into a bit of a raid fight. So I'm gonna try to kill my speed a little bit more. There we go. We are now hovering and we are gonna try to pull some lead on this bitch. We almost do it, but he actually starts dodging, which is kind of annoying. I can lock him up. I'm gonna lead the missile, but it's just not enough because he has more speed than I anticipated. And now we are completely stalled out, so I'm gonna try to get the shot off. We do. We get the kill, and then we get crit. However, our teammate blasts us back to the runway by giving us a little explosive boost. I just made it. Luckily, the Harrier is pretty aerodynamic, even when it's on fire and in 20 million spare parts. But hey, thank you, Kafir7, for shoving a Python up my ass. Getting a missile shoved up my ass is really not my thing anymore, but I still welcome the thought. We get on the FRS that's trying to bomb, we fly over him, we kind of pre-flare in case one of my teammates tries to missile him. Doesn't really work out. I mean, I was too far away from it, but there were no teammates anyway, but it's a thought that counts, right? So, we turn around and we are going back into limp mode, aka the stage you are in this vehicle once you've gone for the first target and you're now going a medium speed on the deck. So we are gonna go head on with 6 people at once. We're gonna try to get something done, but everyone is just exploding, everyone is not flying into my guns, and everyone is not flying into my missile. So I don't shoot any of them, and we just continue on. But there is no use in turning around, because if I turn around I get 3 of them on my 6, and if I keep going straight I only get 1 of them on my 6. So I'm just gonna keep on shooting these AIM-9Ms at medium to close range. I don't get to lock him up properly. And as you can tell, it's really just, I point my nose into a direction and I kind of just keep going. If you start turning in this thing, you bet your ass the entire enemy team is going to focus you, because that's just how it is. The Harrier is a target that people know isn't that hard to kill. It's very annoying to deal with in a team setting because it kind of just accelerates away. It's decently maneuverable, it's decently small, but all in all it's more of a nuisance than an actual threat. However, with the AIM-9Ms, and you've seen them do some work, I still think that the R73 is slightly better, but the AIM-9Ms are an absolute menace, and they are quite good at ignoring flares. They have pretty decent range. They are just a little bit sussier when it comes to the closer range shots, because they don't pull that hard straight off the rail. Now, I thought I was in range of the F-16 here. I'm not sure if I wasn't in range, or if he dodged it kinetically, or if it went for his missile. I am not entirely sure. However, the second one, 1.2 kilometers, well within range. He doesn't flare anywhere near properly enough, and he just ends up eating the missile up his ass. Now this time I'm not sure if he's into it, but my teammate did it to me, so I thought I'd return the favor. Now we have an F4J here, and I'm out of missiles, so I'm just gonna go head on a few times. I am absolutely puzzled how I missed that, and then I look at the bottom of my plane and I realized the gun is on the very far bottom on the far left. So we are now going to keep that thought in our head and go head on again with the 37 rounds that we have. We line it up, we squeeze it, boom, back to the hangar he goes. And I know the gun is always there, but it's good to be actually aware of it, because the gun is quite far offset. I do think it's slightly easier to wield than the GR7, mainly because you have 250 rounds in one gun instead of 200 rounds in two guns, which also has an obscenely high rate of fire. With the GR7 you chew through it extremely quickly. And I'm not gonna pretend like you don't chew through it very quickly with this thing, but as you saw in the clips that I just showed you, at least it hits pretty hard. You don't need many shells to connect. Most of the time it's at least a crit. Very often it's an entire ass kill. But it kind of depends on what you are shooting and how many rounds you hit. Luckily the fire rate is pretty high, the velocity is pretty high, and overall it's pretty easy to aim. However, the plane isn't very easy to line up. So while it's very easy to lead and to aim, to physically get the gun where you want it to go is actually kind of annoying. But really, that's just how the Harriers are. And if you have flown the Harrier GR series in the British or the AV-8 series in the US tech tree, you know exactly what I mean. These planes are just kind of floppy, they are kind of awkward, and they are definitely over-tiered because of the weapon system that's on them. So here we have the F-16A, and he is engaging the MiG-23, so I'm gonna turn into the direction of my friendly to park myself onto his 6 instantly, force the F-16 to go defensive. He does not, however. He's gonna continue on trying to focus the guy in front of him, so we shoot an AIM-9M at him. And let me tell you, if you don't prepare yourself for an AIM-9M, if you don't defend against it properly from a rear aspect, especially with your burner on, you're not gonna do much against it. You need to be wary of these missiles, you need to be dodging them before they are even launched, basically. He didn't do it, and he paid the price for it. So we turn back towards the middle of the game. The game is already basically over, and we are just gonna shoot a missile at this JA-37. We dodge behind the mountain here, in case he shoots a missile at us. And he just gets AIM-9M moment. There is really, you need to flare these things properly. You can't just drop some flares and expect it to miss. You need to utilize the fact that its seeker head turns off for a brief moment to ignore the flares being popped. So you need to pop the flares, and as you are popping them, you need to change direction. So when the seeker head goes back online, or when it opens up, or whatever you want to call it, it doesn't see your plane anymore, because it's going to predict where your plane is going. And if you are not where it's predicting you to be, then it might just lose lock. In a head-on, this is a lot more doable. I still recommend you to turn the afterburner off. Just kind of snap roll, and as you are rolling, pop some flares or pop flares, and just as you press it, start the roll process. You need to just kind of get the timing down for yourself. But overall, they are flareable as long as it's anywhere near the front aspect. The second you start going to side, and especially rear aspect, you're not gonna have the best time flaring them. You really need to prepare yourself for them. You need to pre-flare, you need to set yourself up to defend against the missile. And that's the issue here. There are 16 enemies. There is way too many enemies, and there is way too little flares. If you are flying something like the Harrier, you have plenty of countermeasures, but most of the planes that you are going to be flying have maybe 60. And I'm more and more inclined to run flares only. Everyone is on the deck anyway. You don't really need chaff to notch when you are hugging the deck. But I wish you could just set them up separately. Have like, say, 50 flares and 10 chaff. And then let me drop them individually. So I can just defend against a PD radar and a notch the 2 times in 20 games I actually need to. But you know, that's just a little bit of a pipe dream. We crit the F-14. We are just going to break off. It looks like everyone is going for him. I have no need into finishing that kill. He seems to be absolutely fucked anyway. And that's exactly what happens. And we are just going to engage the other guys that are flying directly in front of us. And that's kind of the way you play this thing. You just kind of go for whatever is in front of you. So we shoot 2 AIM-9Ms. One of them actually leads into the, yeah, there it goes, straight into the mountain. The other one, however, leads directly into the F-14. And then we have a guy coming in that we noticed last second. We flare him. We turn in just in case it's an F-16C and he is using AIM-9Ms. We would have been probably too late, but we did flare the missile at least, which is nice to see. And we are just going to continue on straight. We have a MiG-29 in front of us. He's focusing the F-16. And I am here to support him, because the SMT, as you've seen in yesterday's video, is an absolute boat. So, what do? We are just gonna kind of chase him until we get a good rear aspect launch, and then we will just line it up, we will lead it, and then we just let the AIM-9M do its thing. At least that was what my intention was. We actually miss it, we flares maybe, and that's why I think that something like the R73 is actually better. As it's just much better at those close range shots. You don't need to lead nearly as much, and it's much more forgiving when it comes to lining up the shot. It's entirely possible that that guy just ended up flaring it. I am not entirely sure, but we take down his still control with the 25mm, and he ends up eating shit regardless. And that's all nice and all, but that was my main gripe with the AIM-9M, and because this plane isn't that fast either, it takes the missile quite a bit of time to actually start pulling fully. So if you are in these very close range shots, especially against something like an F-16, it will maintain its speed very, very well. So if you're on that 90-degree aspect shot, side aspect, broadside, or whatever you want to call it, you need to lead it quite a bit. And if you don't lead it properly, the missile is not going to be able to pull in. And that's exactly why I think that the R73 is better, because you can just kind of point it into the general direction. And even if you don't, I mean, you're gonna be fine, because the missile will just pull itself in for you. It's just unfortunate that it's on the SMT as well as on the Su-25BM. Luckily, most of the enemies are as brain dead as this F4E that's just trying to fly the Narnia with his bombs equipped, because he's just not bothered about anyone looking at him whatsoever. We set him on fire, we shoot the AIM-9M at a MiG-21, and that is the nasty thing about this vehicle. You are at 11.7 and you are going to be slightly down-tiered. A decent amount. I'm not gonna tell you that you are gonna run into 10.7 matches every game. 90% of your matches are still going to be 11 point or 12.3. But you're not gonna have to face full teams of these planes every match. You don't get these F-16 versus MiG-29 lobbies that you find at 12.3 almost every match. It's actually kind of diverse. You run into some different planes, you run into Vigans and MiG-23s, we have some F-16s of course and some MiG-29s, we have Kafirs, we have F-4Es, we have a little bit of everything, because this matchmaker is just a lot more diverse, and I think that's a lot more fun, because right now at 12.3 every match, and I mean every match, is 95% F-16s and MiG-29s. And personally, that's not my cup of tea. The same way getting a Python shoved up my ass is not my cup of tea. The same way that getting shot down by the Zaza 35 is not my cup of tea. Luckily my cup of tea is finished, because this entire plane was not my cup of tea. Thank you all for watching, and you will see me all tomorrow with probably the Super 8 and Dart.